Every American city is unique, but New York City stands in a league of its own. Among its 5 famous boroughs, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island, one stands apart in ways you might not expect. Staten Island. Despite being part of America's most populous city, Staten Island is home to less than 500,000 people, making it the least populated borough. That begs the question, why do so few Americans live in Staten Island? Often considered the forgotten borough, Staten Island offers a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of Manhattan and Brooklyn. With its suburban feel, extensive parks, and unique geography, it's unlike any other part of New York City. Today, we're going to understand the history, geography, and challenges that have shaped Staten Island into the borough it is today. Long before skyscrapers touched the sky, Staten Island was alive with history. Archaeologists have discovered tools from the Clovis culture dating back about 14,000 years, making it one of the earliest known inhabited areas in the region. The island was originally home to the Raritans and Unamis Native American tribes. In 1524, Italian explorer Giovanni di Verrazzano first sighted the island, but it wasn't until the Dutch arrived in the 1630s that European settlement began in earnest. The Dutch called it Staten Island, but their attempts to colonize were met with fierce resistance from the native tribes. Conflicts like the Pig War in 1641, the Whiskey War in 1642, and the Peach War in 1655 made early settlement challenging. It wasn't until 1661 that a lasting Dutch colony called Oude Dorp, or Old Town, was established near what is now South Beach. In 1664, the English seized control, renaming the island in honor of the Duke of Richmond, son of King Charles II. By the end of the 17th century, Staten Island's population was just over 1,000, consisting mainly of English, French, and Dutch settlers. Despite being under English rule, the island remained largely rural, supporting farms, mills, and a growing fishing industry, especially shellfishing. During the Revolutionary War, Staten Island played a significant role. George Washington spent 2 days surveying the island, establishing a lookout at the Narrows, now Fort Wadsworth, to anticipate the British arrival. The final shot of the American Revolution was fired at Fort Wadsworth by a departing British warship on November 25, 1783. After the war, many Loyalists fled, and their estates were confiscated and sold, leading to new development. Throughout the 19th century, Staten Island saw gradual growth, but remained relatively isolated. From 1800 to 1858, the island hosted the nation's largest quarantine facility, which was burned down by angry residents in the Staten Island Quarantine War. In 1898, Staten Island consolidated with New York City, becoming one of its 5 boroughs. Even with this new status, development lagged behind the other boroughs. Infrastructure was limited. Roads and sewage systems were poor, and transportation links were minimal. It wasn't until the construction of the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge in 1964 that Staten Island was directly connected to Brooklyn, spurring some growth, but not enough to catch up with the rest of the city. Staten Island stands alone, literally. It's the only New York City borough not linked by land to another borough. The island is roughly triangular, about 14 miles long and 7 miles wide, with 35 miles of waterfront. While most of Staten Island is relatively flat, it boasts 7 hills running from St. George to La Tourette. Tut Hill, rising to 410 feet above sea level, is the highest point on the Atlantic coast south of Maine. Known as the greenest borough, Staten Island features over 170 parks and more than 12,300 acres of protected parkland, accounting for over 1/3 of its total landmass. The East Shore is home to the South Beach Franklin Delano Roosevelt Boardwalk, the 4th longest boardwalk in the world. The island's extensive green spaces and parks offer a mix of hills, valleys, and flatlands, providing habitats for diverse wildlife, including white-tailed deer, bald eagles, and even the recently discovered Atlantic coast leopard frog. Natural beauty isn't everything, so what's holding Staten Island back? One significant factor is its physical location. Separated from the rest of New York City by the upper New York Bay, residents rely heavily on bridges and ferries for transportation. The Staten Island Ferry is a lifeline to Manhattan, but it can be time-consuming and crowded, especially during rush hours. The borough is connected to New Jersey by 3 bridges, but only connected to the rest of New York City by the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Transportation infrastructure within the island is also lacking compared to other boroughs. Staten Island is the only borough not connected to the New York City subway system, making commuting more challenging. The average commute time for Staten Islanders is over 45 minutes, significantly higher than the national average. Many residents endure commutes of 90 minutes or more, partly because nearly half work outside the borough. Historically, Staten Island has been underserved in terms of infrastructure development. Before consolidation into New York City, the island had minimal investment in roads and sewage systems. Even after becoming a borough, many areas still rely on septic systems, and some roads are little more than a few inches of asphalt over dirt. A proposed rail link to Brooklyn or Manhattan was never constructed, further limiting transportation options. Another challenge is the presence of the Fresh Kills landfill. Opened in 1947 as a temporary landfill, it became the world's largest man-made structure and a significant environmental concern. Over 53 years, approximately 150 million tons of trash were deposited there. Not exactly a selling point for new residents. Although it closed in 2001, it left a lasting impact on the borough's image and development. Plans are underway to transform it into a park nearly 3 times the size of Central Park, which could enhance the island's appeal. Demographics also play a role. Staten Island is the only New York City borough with a non-Hispanic white majority. About 35% of residents are of Italian descent, the highest proportion in the state. This demographic shift began in the 1950s during the period known as White Flag, when many Italian-American communities from Brooklyn moved to Staten Island. The opening of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge accelerated this migration. Economically, Staten Island faces hurdles. While employment numbers are up, growth is concentrated in industries that often pay lower wages, like retail and health services. There's also an alarming exodus of young people seeking opportunities elsewhere. Office vacancy rates remain high, and many businesses find it challenging to operate due to the island's infrastructure and regulatory environment. Staten Island's climate, with warm summers and cold winters, is another factor. The island is particularly susceptible to flooding and storm surges during extreme weather events like hurricanes. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 caused severe damage and loss of life, highlighting the borough's vulnerability to climate change and rising sea levels. Despite these challenges, Staten Island has much to offer. Its vast parks, unique geography, and suburban feel provide a respite from the urban intensity of the other boroughs. The island's cultural diversity is growing, with communities from Russia, Poland, and Sri Lanka adding to its rich tapestry. Efforts are underway to improve infrastructure, enhance economic opportunities, and transform areas like the Fresh Kills landfill into green spaces. So, why do so few Americans live in Staten Island? It's a combination of historical neglect, geographical isolation, infrastructural challenges, and economic factors. Yet, for those who call it home, Staten Island offers a blend of city and suburb, nature and development, tradition and change.